You got troubles, put them in the past, cause you're free at last, time to have a blast. You don't know, well, we're so glad that you asked. It's the FozCast.
We're live. I feel like I say that at the beginning of all of them. That's just to let you guys know anyways. But welcome to episode 8 of the FozCast podcast. Welcome if you were here and early already on Twitch. If you're watching this on YouTube at a later date, hello to you as well. Today's topic is going to be game development, the process of it, various different roles in it, which is why I have these lovely people around me. They all work in different fields of it, I believe. So hopefully we can get a different angle from every process. That would be very unfortunate. We'll be talking about the effect of the pandemic on. I mean, I'm kind of sick of talking about it, but it is a topic that is affecting game development. We've seen it with a lot of games that have launched. So yeah, that's basically it. We have Phill Gonzales here, that way. We have BigSteak below me, and then Duo is that way. Phill, if you want to introduce yourself, let people know what your job title is, what you do, and then we'll go over to BigSteak and Duo in that order.
Some game-related development stuff like 3D modeling, texturing, stuff like that. And when I graduated, I've been working in games ever since. I've worked on PlayStation 2 games and kind of worked on a bunch of the console stuff since then. And I've been very fortunate. I worked at Blizzard for about 13 years. I helped get Starcraft 2 developed, and then I moved on and helped make Heroes of the Storm. And after Heroes of the Storm, I've moved on, recently to help TurtleRock develop Back 4 Blood, which was announced on the 15th, actually, at the Game Awards. So very, very excited to finally kind of show some of the work that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we've done over there. But yeah, more or less just been constantly working in games, and I'm a very big advocate of the game design and development process. I've played games my whole life. I still try to make a lot of time for gaming in my spare time, and making games has been a very, very fun hobby that I get paid to do. So that's more or less me.
That was going to be my first question as well. How did you kind of answered the question before I asked it, sorry. How did you get into, how did you get into, game development, I guess? I mean, I think you have to sort of, have an interest in what you're doing. It's a very niche line of work, in my opinion. And BigSteak, how did you get into
every other job? We put our pants on one leg at a time too.
BigSteak, how about yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm BigSteak. It's kind of odd not to say my actual name, but
you can say it if you want.
I'm Brandon. My name is Brandon. Nice to meet everyone. I work for Behaviour Interactive, so that's the developers behind Dead by Daylight. This is actually my first job at a video game studio. What I'm doing currently is live ops manager. What that entails is basically it mostly works around games as a service. So it's managing the live operations of the game, whatever it be. In the back end, I do manage. So when it comes to deploying data for the game, new updates, nothing front facing, all back end, as well as doing some reports on sales and retention, and that's about it. Pretty much of generating promo codes, little things that keeps the ball rolling. Maintaining the engine of the game basically in the back end.
So my question there is, do you work with the various platforms, so like Microsoft, Xbox, PlayStation? Is that something your job involves, or different field?
The back end itself is all unified, so it just it works on everything. So that's how it's integrated. And I'm not sure how other games would work per se, but the way our game works is it's all connected to one back end. I would assume most games are like that anyway. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. I didn't ever expect to be in this field. It was kind of like a pipe dream. My background is finance and business administration, and I got laid off in the pandemic because I used to work for a travel agency. Of course, that happened. But lo and behold, I found a job that kind of aligned well with me, and my managers saw that pretty easily, pretty fast. So I work alongside the product managers of the game, and sometimes the creative director of the game, but it's very rare. But most of the time, it's product managers and the lead product manager.
So, without meaning to focus like too much on Dead by Daylight too early, like with you saying, like working like behind the scenes with crossplay, is that something you've worked on at all, like with the team?
Not directly myself. My coworker who's on my team, who's one of the project managers, was the head for crossplay and cross progression.
Right.
So yeah, I saw it firsthand. It's pretty exciting actually, because we were one of the first few games that had implemented that. So we were really really excited to have that feature implemented. So I don't have much to say on that part because I didn't work on it myself, but least I can say is he was super excited to have that release. It was a good moment, because I think that was something that people generally want, as a gamer, to be able to switch from platform to platform, be it like nowadays we're all on our smartphones now, and you have a bunch of games that have like pretty much perfect versions on smartphones. So to have the ability
games like
to
Among Us, wherever you can play on every platform, it's coming to Xbox, like coming to console.
You got Genshin Impact, that's huge right now. So again,
even Call of Duty, maybe not on the mobile front, but Call of Duty you can play with Xbox, PlayStation players, PC, and it's good as well for like connecting gamers that want to play together.
That's
There's
it. Like
no
in
limitation.
Terms of, like matchmaking, for example, like to give players the option. Maybe some players are on PC and would rather prefer to play with PC players, or console would rather prefer playing with console. But to give everyone the option is just nice, and you have different friends in different systems. I'm messing up my words here. Different friends on different platforms, and removing the barrier of the platform is a great feat, I would say. I'm not sure how long it took, because when I just joined, it was released pretty much within months, but I'm sure it took at least a year to develop.
Well, I'm sure. Well, Dead by Daylight's been around for like 2 or 3
4
years
or 5
now.
years now.
Is it 4 or 5? I thought it was 2 or 3.
4 bordering on 5.
Wow.
We just did our 4th anniversary when I started in June.
Okay.
So like I said, I'm very new to the industry, but coming next June will be year 5.
Cool.
So Duo, do you want to introduce yourself and let people know what you do? What you've worked on?
I'm Duo. MTL stands for Montreal, where I'm from. There's a big video game industry here. My name is Adam. I've worked in the video game industry for about 12 years, I guess. I used to work for EA Montreal before that got defunct. Then I worked at a couple of different indie studios. I worked at Ubisoft also for a little bit, but that was more like a contract. I did it for like a summer, and then I went back to the indie studio that I was working at. Basically, the old company was Artifice Studio. We made Sang Froid, which is like the most Canadian game you could possibly ever play. It's got an amazing soundtrack, and it's super Canadian. But other than that, I work at Auto Exec Games now. I do 3D animation mostly, and level design, and some game design. Usually, we're like 3 or 4 people working in a very small company. You basically do a little bit of everything. Like I manage like most of interaction with people and stuff like that. So like if anyone is in message boards or on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever, or like after the game launches on the Steam forums and stuff like that, I'm the one that's talking to them all the time. I did the same thing at I was about to say at at Artifice Studio. And then like I said, animations and rigging. I don't do any of the models. I don't do any of the 3D models or texturing or anything like that, but I record videos, I do dev blogs, like literally a little bit of everything, but it's just what happens when you have like such a small team. And as far as how I got into this, it was basically the same as Phill. It's just legit loved playing games. I always wanted to be in the video game industry. I took the reason why I did animation is because I literally took the quickest route to possibly get inside of it. And so I went to like a trade tech college that had an animation program that was only a year long. They had like a placement program for stages. I got a stage or an internship at EA that hired me right afterwards, which was fantastic. And then I just kind of went from there. I actually went back to school because I always kind of wanted to program. I always have a little bit more of a technical mind. I don't think I'm that great of an artist personally, which is funny because I do art. But yeah, so I always wanted to program, so I went back to school to do computer science. I took a semester off. I've been doing it part-time for the last like 3 years or something like that. So like I wasn't really in a rush. It was more for myself. Then I don't know if I would even get a job as a programmer, but you know, it was just something I wanted to do, so I went back to go do that. And that's basically how everything that's the way she goes.
So you've actually just answered the next question I was going to ask, which was, if you don't mind me asking, what sort of like education do you have to get in the game industry, and is it like
honestly? Sorry,
is it like a tight knit sort of industry where if you've worked on one project, someone who's worked on that project with you might suggest you for another game that's in development?
That's like any industry, honestly. Networking is so important for anything. Knowing people always helps, and when you work at big companies, you end up knowing people a little bit everywhere. Like I'll run into people here and there, especially if you go to like there's a conference in Montreal called MIGS. It's the Montreal International Film Game Summit, and it's like my boss knows everyone there almost.
Right.
And I know a fair amount of people, and I get introduced all the time because he knows practically everyone. And so that helps. He knows a lot of the indie scene. He knows like people that we worked with at Artifice Studio. One of the founders of that left. He made us another studio. He is he's trying to make like a sort of like a guild of indie developers, like a union almost in Montreal. And so he has like two different things. One's called the Asylum, which is like in Montreal. There's a place called Game Space or Game Play Space or something like that. It's like a company that runs it is like a office share space for indie developers. And so like you might have small teams of like 2 or 3 people that all rent out space from this place. And the company also does funding for some of these projects. And they take like a bit of a revenue share or something like that. But they have a place to work. They have a place like a nice office with a kitchen and like all the different stuff that you probably wouldn't have when you're just working from home kind of thing. So that's pretty cool. That's the same thing that he made with the Asylum. Like I've been there. It's pretty cool. We had a gigantic friggin' media day when we did when there was MIGS there last year. It was pretty cool. It was a lot of fun. I mean, like honestly, like getting together with a bunch of people like that. Like we haven't done it in a year, mainly because of the pandemic. It's a completely different space. Like BigSteak, like it'll be fun when you actually get to go to do some of that stuff because it's like a completely different industry compared to what you were working in before, right? And like all that stuff is really cool. And yeah, so we basically networking is always very important. Knowing people in other places will always help you get jobs. And as far as what you need to know, going to school always helps. But honestly, if you do cool shit and you know what you're doing and you have a really good like portfolio or reel or something like that, especially if you're doing art, you can get a job. And the more experience you have, obviously, like when you have a job and you do good work, it's easy to get another job. Like, I mean, like we're probably going to get into this afterwards, but like people working at like Rockstar, working crazy overtime and stuff like that, and they launched Red Dead. Like, I'm sure they love their jobs, despite like, you know, there's probably the vocal minority of people talking about crunch in a negative way. I mean, like crunch is everywhere. You've been in school, you've friggin' done all-nighters trying to get a project done. Like it happens. It's life. Like
That was
I've been talking to people. Sorry,
that was going to be my next question. Sorry, continue.
know.
I'll ask after. I was going to say,
how do you
Big
feel? Like
Steak,
everyone has.
Big Steak won't really be able to answer this one because it's
You
like
never
his
know.
first job in the industry.
Yeah, but you never know.
If you don't mind me asking, could you give me like a rough time frame from when you leave like one job in the industry to go into another? Like, how quick is it that you find another form of employment at another studio or project?
I would never leave a job without finding another one, but I mean, like, depends on who you know. You can get a job pretty quickly. And like, I know some guy that flip-flop between so many different jobs in Montreal, like legit, like in the last, I've known him for like maybe 5 years or whatever, and he's probably had 3 or 4 jobs in that time. And he's gone from Ubisoft to Eidos to, I think he's at Compulsion now, and like they just got bought out by Microsoft and stuff like that. So I mean, like, you can have a really quick turnaround, or it could be a long time. Like, it depends. There's a lot of companies here, but there's also a lot of people trying to get jobs. So like, it depends.
Yeah, kind of sharing the same opinion as Duo. We have a lot of studios in Montreal. So if we were talking about Montreal, actually, as a general opinion, from what I'm hearing from my coworkers, is that the gaming industry is quite tight knit, and kind of everyone knows each other. Sort of what Duo just said. But going back to my point of Montreal, I do know people who have come and gone from Behaviour, or they came back. You know, they'll go between Ubisoft or Square Enix. There's Gameloft, there's Ludia. There's a bunch of mobile developers here that are pretty big too. So
mid-ranged, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Gameloft, I would say, is pretty high up there.
Yeah, well, when you're talking about mid-range, it's like anywhere between 200 and 500 people, I would say.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a lot of turnaround. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, a lot of people will come back. It's just finding a nice fit. I find it kind of cool that people kind of float around because they'll try to figure out what's best for them. Yeah, it could be projects too. Yeah.
Is there cases where maybe, I don't really know the industry, so I'm just kind of poking and prying here, trying to figure things out. Is there a point where, say, Big Steak, you work on Dead by Daylight, which is a long-term game? I assume they're going to just keep updating that game. Behaviour, obviously you couldn't disclose this if they were working on something else, but maybe Duo and Phil might be able to answer this. Is there often times where you've done your bit on the project you're working on, and then you can maybe go somewhere else and then come back to the studio or the project you were working on?
Usually what'll happen, at least from my experience, would be that if you're working, like at my studio, like we're very small, we're only working on one game, but at EA, like when your work is done, I mean, like there's other projects, you'll get rotated onto another team. Like as far as animators, where we were like 8 animators on one project, and when that was, or I think there were like 6. I was on another team, but that was getting like kind of like derailed, and so a lot of us were kind of getting moved around. And so there was a team that was basically ramping up production to finish off the game. So they needed a couple of animators. So they added more to their team. And when that game was getting done, you spend like a week or two kind of doing jack all until they figure out where you're going to go. But you eventually get put somewhere else. So there's not really like there's always something to do. Like if you're on one project and your work is done, because eventually there's no more models to be made, but there's always going to be 1 or 2 people on the project, but there might not be 6. So they'll rotate 4 people off and they'll keep 2 people on just for, touch-ups and little things here and there and stuff like that. But I mean, what about you, Phil?
I definitely feel, to kind of answer the first question and tie into this one, the reputation that permeates from your work and what you're doing within the game, it makes such a huge difference, because when projects do wind down, those relationships you've built over the course of a project and the things you've experienced together, people remember you. And my experience in the industry is when projects have come to a close, I've often gotten tapped on the shoulder and people ask me, hey, what are you doing right now? Because we have something else in the works, and we know you're technical enough as an artist to kind of approach this in a way where we could actually build it. We could get this idea on screen. We could get the models, the tools we're using are within an engine you've already experienced. There's a lot of parameters where people will kind of think of you outside of the box, and they'll say, hey, the next thing coming around the corner, you could help out big time if we got you to apply your expertise here. And I found if you're a hard worker and you have that reputation of your work precedes you, like those opportunities kind of come. And
Yeah,
I've been
100%.
very fortunate that a lot of the projects I've been asked to join are like, hey, you helped us a ton over here. Like we got a pile of art into the game and we figured out a bunch of problems that we weren't ready to figure out and they just got solved, and you can anticipate where we're heading and we're doing something else. Can you help us again? And that's been like, that's the key to it, in my opinion.
So
Yeah, knowing what you're doing is perfect for
Mhm.
sure. That's it. But that comes with playing a ton of games. Like when I stream whenever I play games half the time, and if there's like an issue, I'm like sometimes I like with some games, I'm like, do these people even play their own games? Like it doesn't even make sense sometimes. And I know that's horribly disrespectful because I know they have to play their games. Like it doesn't make
Mhm.
sense.
do
But
you ever
sometimes
have
like
that where you play a game and you look at it and you think, oh, I could fix that. I know how to
what
do that.
100%,
How
no
often
matter
does that
what.
happen?
100%, you're like, I don't know why they made this decision. I mean, like, it would have been so much better like this. But sometimes eventually you'll be like, okay, I can maybe understand where they came from. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into this. And I don't mean to undermine that, but sometimes could be inexperience. Sometimes you get way too close to a project and you don't see the things that are wrong with it. And
It's the
that's why
same with
playtesting is
anything,
very,
though.
yeah.
You
No,
know, if
that's why
you
playtesting and getting like outside of experience is very important.
like a
Yeah,
different point of view, that basically
Exactly.
like a third person perspective where
Mhm.
someone who's like not gonna admit the faults if your heart's in
Yeah.
it a bit too much.
But some people that get work in the game industry don't play a lot of games.
Yeah,
It happens.
that's one thing I was gonna say as well. If you're new to the industry, what's like, why would anyone take an inexperienced person who's new to the industry over the guy who's already worked on 10 projects that were maybe good?
Because he knows what the fuck he's doing sometimes.
The inexperienced one, you mean?
If even if you're not experienced with games, I mean, like you might be an amazing programmer.
Well, I mean, take me for example. They saw some potential in me without having any experience in the gaming industry. Based on my resume, they just pretty much figured this would be a good fit for the job. Perfect fit. They were looking for this to fill this position actually for quite some time. They told me so. Sometimes it's tough to find someone that's not super in the gaming industry. And that's not to say I'm not. I'm more like a viewer, a bystander, a lurker. I play games, but probably not to the same extent as you guys for sure. But at the same time, that has its own advantage.
Oh, you have a different perspective.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. So I can name countless amounts of times where I brought up ideas that it kind of made people think. It's like, wait, that actually works. That makes sense. And to me, it's like a no-brainer, but to them, it isn't. So it's kind of funny because it's like, doesn't this just make sense? And then it's like, oh crap, it does. It just clicks in their head. So
That's why diversity matters, not just in race or anything like that, but I mean like diversity in all walks of life. I mean, like you'll always have a different perspective and you can always bring something to the table, even if it's not hardcore gamerness.
I will admit it is a bit of a gamble though, when you, especially, I mean, where I'm kind of going to one of Fozzie's next points, but with this whole work from home thing, like I haven't met many of my coworkers. I've only met maybe a handful of them for a couple of hours. So, when it comes to the interviewing process, it's been tough for people to just kind of gauge how this person is, what their personality is like. It's different.
You don't have that person to person interaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my next question about that as well is how often do you know, if say you go to a job interview for a game, or maybe a company's disguised themselves on a job website, how often do you know what project you're applying to work on? Is it like all the time? You know what company you're working for, what game you're working on? Or is there sort of like some secrecy between it often?
Sometimes with the interview, they'll actually make you sign an NDA because they'll talk about what you're going to be hired for.
Right.
They won't often hire you without explaining what you're going to be working on. At least not from my experience. And every interview, I think I've always kind of talked about potential projects I'd be working on.
so you can sort of muster up a guess
Well,
at the interview
not
or through the
necessarily even a
application
guess.
point.
Yeah, at least in my experience.
BigSteak, most recently, I think you have been going through the application like for work at Behaviour. What was your like experience with that? Easy, difficult?
You mean the interview process as a whole?
Yeah, yeah.
Or it was very
Did you
interesting.
know what you were working on? Like, obviously, if the company and you see its behaviour on whatever job site you're working on, you're probably going to hazard a guess that 9 times out of 10 you're going to be working on Dead by Daylight. But
I applied through LinkedIn, but I know, like, looking at their website directly, they have job listings for Dead by Daylight, or it could be Dead by Daylight Mobile, or it could actually be like an unannounced IP. So they're pretty transparent in what you're going to be working on. Of course, if it's an unannounced IP, I mean, that's a different story. But what can I say? I don't know about the unannounced IPs, basically, how that process is. If there's an NDA, I would assume there is an NDA, or they would maybe not talk to you in the first.
Yeah, if you don't want to sign the
interviews.
NDA, they probably don't even do the interview.
Yeah, it probably starts off with feature.
Phill, how's your experience been with the application processes in the industry?
My experience has been usually on projects that have big NDAs, they will do an art test that has a parallel theme. So, at Blizzard, they'd say like, well, we want you to try and do this. And you're like, okay, I'm getting a piece of reference that's from, like maybe Halo, but they're telling me like, try it in this style, and they give you a concept. They're basically almost able to test you without revealing what they're actually doing. They're just showing you a parallel design theme and stuff like that. They're saying like, it's going to be like a Diablo-esque. So they'll usually kind of brief you, and the art test put you in a position where you know what to expect, but you're not really getting to see anything behind the curtain yet. They're very good about obstructing like the goal of the interview, which, in those interviews, I've learned a lot of the time people are looking at something that you probably have no idea about. They're talking to you, engaging how responsive you are to the work and how your problem solving and articulation come across when they're asking you questions. And you're just like, okay, I thought we were going to talk about me making Warcraft art. They're like, no. So what do you think of Lord of the Rings? And you're like, okay. And they're just kind of like probing you.
But they're still in the similar vein, kind of like the same.
Kind of gauging where your alignment is, because what they're really looking at, they probably already decided if I'm viable or not. They're trying to figure out the fine details of like, where do I kind of stand on aesthetics, design principles, visuals, stuff like that. And a lot of that nuance, like, you have to be pretty on top of your, art brain to understand that those guys are asking those kind of questions. So you do the best you can, and you don't really get to know anything until you get hired. And then they're like, okay, by the way, you're working on, when I got hired at Blizzard, I was like, I know I'm not going to be on WoW because those guys turned me down. So is it Diablo 3 or Starcraft 2? And they're like, well, we're working on both of those. I'm like, and then like, but it's Starcraft 2. And I'm like, that's cool. I love Starcraft. It was one of those things where like my test had nothing to do with it. I'd interviewed for the WoW team, and I wasn't quite a fit there. And the Starcraft team's just like, can we talk to him next? And they're like, okay. And I didn't even test.
So how often do you think that maybe happens where you might not be a fit for one project, so they put you on another? How many times, say out of 10, do you think that would happen if a company has so many games in development that maybe
you got a good recruiter? Hopefully it's happening half the time where they recognize where the value of the talent is. But that's the biggest trick, is these projects are so complicated, and everyone wants unicorns who can do multiple disciplinary things within the development cycle. And they're all like, it's trying to shop for like the right car. Like everyone's hoping to get a great deal. And some people are more specialized, some people are more diversified, and each team's different. So you're really kind of at the mercy of whatever odds are in the company's favor there and there. If you're lucky enough to get called, I guess that's, getting your foot in the door is the trick.
So with you mentioning that the WoW team kind kind of said that they didn't think you were the right fit, then StarCraft came along. That does kind of like lead into my next question of how, like, you guys are all sort of like three different departments, I want to say, in the industry. How do departments sort of liaise with each other in the process of the development?
Yeah, I mean, my team is 3 people, so we just kind of talk to each other, but it's not much. Like, it goes in, like, you have like a gigantic hierarchy of stuff, right? I mean, like, I used to work on an animation team where 8 people, we talk amongst each other. We have one lead that talks to the other leads, who talks to the producer, who talks to the people above him, and it just kind of goes up and up and up. It's pretty simple.
So how often would you say you liaise with the different areas of the development teams?
It depends what you're doing. Like, I've talked to, like, I'm a very talkative person or whatever, and I don't mind getting up and walking to another desk and talking to someone if I have to, but most of the time a lot of people will not do that.
Right, so antisocial.
Not necessarily that. I mean, it depends how comfortable you are with the team. I mean, like, it depends who you know too. It makes a lot more sense if you technically know the people, and that comes with, you know, a big network. Knowing, having friends around the dev team, having friends, it's a lot easier. Like, if I'm doing an animation, I notice a problem with design or something like that, and have a friend on the design team, and I go to his desk and talk to him about that. If I don't have any friend on the design team, I might go talk to my lead, who will go talk to them. Exactly. I'll talk to
you
the
might not
people
want
I
to bring
know.
that up with them directly in case they get a bit iffy about it. Is there a lot of that where, like, you'd feel like you don't want to mention that directly to someone if you didn't know them that well? Is that
Depends
like
who you are?
Yeah, I guess how your personality is and whatnot.
You would mainly talk to your boss and then get him to talk to someone else that he knows. At least
Right.
that's what I would do. I mean, it depends. It depends on the culture of your studio too. It depends how big your dev team is. Like, the biggest team I worked on was like only like 40 or 50 people. It wasn't very big. And so, I mean, like, I knew a fair amount of people, but not everyone. So, like, it really depends. Like, if I was working at Ubisoft on like Assassin's Creed and there's like 300 or 400 people, I would only talk to my boss. Like, it's not.
Yeah, it's just
a
not
completely different
productive
beast.
to go on. Yeah. So my next thing is kind of for Phil. This is just something I was a little curious about. Do you ever, like, obviously, again, I'm trying to gauge the industry. When it comes to whether it be like character development or general art design in games, how does that work? Can it be you can, like, draw a concept for a character, and then maybe whoever works on the other department of making the AI or the characteristics for the character, would they do that? Or does anyone ever sort of come to you and go, oh, I've had this idea for a character, this is kind of what I want him to be like, could you, like, draw me something, like a concept for him? How often is it that you draw something and then go to them and then they put the character in, or vice versa? Which way around is that?
So in my experience, I've worked on games where I'm kind of being asked to build things. And
Right.
as a commercial artist, I more or less will relate to as many people in the creative process as I need to. And my responsibility was usually making the 3D models. So I would work with an art director, and he would produce concepts based on meetings he would have at a higher level with design. For example, the game designers would talk about the overall vision of, we want to put this kind of character in the game. It needs to adhere to these visual themes and take up this kind of space and function like this. And thankfully, on a lot of the projects I've worked on, the vision and the scope were predetermined. We knew in StarCraft that we were making, RTS units. In Heroes, we knew we were making MOBA characters. So we know what we can get away with, and they would outline kind of more or less a blueprint or a brief of the character. And from there, with my knowledge of the game engine, I would be able to kind of extrapolate and mock up 3D models to say, like, okay, with just mesh on screen, this is what we're looking at. And we would iterate from there. Take a look at the first stages of the model where it's just completely ugly. It's all gray. It's just, the rawest interpretation, but we'd already start learning things like, oh, we should move these anatomical areas around so they're more visible from our game camera. Our camera view is typically locked from a top-down view. so we can anticipate a lot of the design choices and making sure things like readability, the team color, the way it paths with the other units, if it's bigger or smaller than other units. There'd be a lot of things we debug on that level. And from there, we would refine that. It would be, a second pass of the model, getting it more conducive to handing off to an animator so the topology is really nice, working with the technical artists and the animators to create a rig that works with the topology, adding more mesh loops if we need something to deform better, but really being as thorough as possible about we're taking this seriously. We have this character who has to do this many things, and no matter how cool the art looks, if we hand it to a tech artist and an animator, they will have to reinvent engineer something if we haven't done our job right. And it was always something that was very important to the creative process to allow the art director to trust us to build it in 3D so we could achieve that. And ultimately, once it's animated, the animation staff has such a huge job of working with the game systems to call the animations at the appropriate times, to blend these animations together, to work with blending systems and other extrapolations. For example, in StarCraft, I think the units could die by so many different ways because they could get incinerated, they could get burned by acid, they could get eviscerated. And the animators have to curate so much work and then rely on tech art to implement it right, that you really have to be on top of your game and talking to everybody to make sure that works. Because, if day one, the first impression, if it's not implemented correctly, people are like, eh. And you have to put a lot of work
100%.
into preparing for that moment.
It's funny. I was actually yeah. Do you ever watch GDC stuff?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I was watching one about pitching games and stuff like that, and just talking about visual, like having a bit of flair with your prototype, just so that it has a nice feeling when you're playing it, because it could be fun, but if it has a nice flair to it and it catches your eye, and that
Mhm.
comes with, like the acid looking proper, right? Not just like, if it's some fake acid or whatever, and it just like, okay, fine, whatever, it looks cool. But if it fucking looks good and it
Mhm.
feels good, it's gonna push your point so much further than anything else. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and we can do so much in games, but it has to fit within the scope. Like if your technology allows for something as immersive as this character got sprayed by a Zerg creature and he's melting now that he's passed away, you're like, that's a pretty cool immersive experience, but that's also, on paper, maybe a week or two of someone's time.
Mm.
And if we're smart, we can plan all that time out so people don't have to crunch, but it doesn't always work out like that. And when the scope gets big, like that's when these projects get scary.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
And I think with us mentioning the crunch, I think that does lead perfectly into the next part.
Getting back to what I was saying before, though, because I never
Yeah.
actually finished my
Go on,
sentence.
sorry, my apologies.
No, but it was a while ago. I was talking about people working at like Rockstar or whatever and going at the
Yep.
crunch and stuff like that. I'm sure like most of them like love their job. It's always a vocal minority that's going to complain about something. And the thing is, anyone working for like 5 years at Rockstar and Red Dead 2 could get a job like that. It doesn't even matter. Like they just throw their freaking CV at someone. They're like, yeah, sure, fucking come. But they're probably not going to want to leave fucking Rockstar. That's like the pinnacle almost, like working at Blizzard or something like that. Or like, a runoff studio from one of the original developers from Blizzard or whatever. Like it's just you're at the top of the top, and it's like it's a completely another different level. And it's just
But
completely
it's also kind of
different
crazy
level.
because then you have to kind of how do I put this, like get used to that, like eating steak every day. You're just like, okay, man, I love steak, but holy smokes, I'm kind of done with eating steak. And they're like, oh, we make steak around here, and you're like, oh, fun. I used to love macaroni and cheese in a box, man. I go with that and some hamburger helper right now. And they're like, what? And you're just like, you can burn hard, but without the rest. And I think
Yeah,
that's
no,
the
for sure.
biggest thing that permeates the industry is if creative people who are, we're essentially making interactive art, and art's subjective, and we're all pouring a huge amount of time trying to make this interactive art experience hopefully lucrative for the business so we can have fun just making it.
Mhm.
But man, if you're on all the time, like I feel for you because you have to be able to rest. Like you can't be so detail minded and focused without figuring out how to unplug and rest. And man, anyone who's in those grinders, like it takes a lot of energy to maintain that pace.
One thing that makes me laugh as well is that an article came out, and obviously you guys don't want to trash other people's games and whatnot. An article came out maybe last month before Cyberpunk launched, and it was CD Projekt Red are like crunching staff and making them work extra hours all the time, and people are there on Twitter saying like, oh, it's so unfair that they're treating staff this way and blah blah blah, and it's not fair, they need a break, they need a rest. Then the game comes out and it's kind of a mess here and there, and everyone's like, fuck CD Projekt Red, they gave us a fucking trash game, blah blah blah. It's like last month you were having a go at people for crunching staff. Like, you can't have it both ways. Pick one side or the other, man.
Yeah. I feel bad for them because it's like, but the thing is, the problem with that is that it's not even the same experience for everyone. Some people have zero issue, and some people are like, "This is the buggiest piece of shit I've ever played." It's like, have you played games? Some games are terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I really appreciate it when people can kind of step outside just like the product aspect of games and realize, like, dude, this game represents like hundreds of people's work for the past like 5 years, and I'm like, no one's built something this insane before. Like, and we're so accustomed to these AAA experiences and stuff, and we're seeing something that's like truly unique in the effort and the undertaking. And I feel for them because inevitably there's going to be that criticism, because you can't work on something that long and put it out and not be completely prepared for 5 years worth of work to be looked at in one moment. You know, like, no one has that crystal ball. But you know, I hope they're all like getting to the light at the end of the tunnel of like the games coming out and they're stabilizing it, because CD Projekt Red, man, they have done an amazing job. It's just the amount of stuff in that game, like, it blows my mind.
That's
like,
insane. It's huge.
Most of the people trashing that game are the ones who haven't played it as well. On Twitter, I see people that are like, I haven't even bought the game, but it looks dog shit. It's like, you can't say that until you've played a game. It's like a movie or anything, an album. Like, people trash anything without experience in it. And it's like, most people haven't even played like a full unbuggy finished game at the moment. Like, give them a chance to fix it. Like, you wanted it pushed out, and you got what you wanted. I mean, investors wanted it pushed out, you got what you wanted.
Imagine if it came out in March or if it came out in November. Like,
exactly. Like, it's delayed again. Like,
that was probably the reason why it was out now, obviously, because of the holiday season, and investors want it out because it's a lucrative time to push something out, especially with COVID. Everyone's sitting at home playing video games, right? So this is something they want to take advantage of. But I mean, it really backfired on them, at least for like the base model PS4 and Xbox One. But I can't blame anyone working.
It's hard to get on home consoles because the PC Master Race, there's such a range of great performance options that you can kind of hopefully expect your game to be out there. But with these consoles,
even at the entry level for PC as well, like the entry level for PC is much better than console, in my opinion.
You're clamped to whatever the hardware specs are when that console came out, and you're like, man.
They probably shouldn't have just released it on the PS4 and the Xbox One. They should not have. They should have just the
probably.
Thing is, the game. Well, the problem is the game was it was supposed to come out in March, and the PS4 and the Xbox One were the only things out in March.
Yeah, but there's someone out there who goes up to BigSteak and they're like, look at these numbers. We have to put on these. Like, what kind of users
right?
Like PlayStation 4. And to truly speak to those analytics, like the stuff BigSteak is doing, like, when you know that information, it's crazy. We would see things like how many people like just installed the game, but okay, that's a good number. And they're like, here's how many people actually played the campaign. And it would be like so low. And like, here's how many people played and then finished it. And that number would be it'd be like 1% of 1%. And you just like, man, we worked on that campaign for 3 years and no one's seeing it.
Yeah.
And that stuff would humble you. And
it hurts.
You know, they would come in, they'd say like, okay, well, this is a lot more lucrative, these micro campaigns or these visual updates and stuff like that. And you really start to see like when the business side has to influence the game success, you're like, we're doing a lot of things that don't really serve the game. It serves the business of the game. And it's really tricky making money and making people entertained at the same time, because as soon as you ask for money, you're in trouble.
Yep.
So for you guys
then
personally,
you're the devil.
Activision, I'm just going to say that you've
What was your question?
taken all my hard-earned cash, but my Warzone, it'll get you, man, it'll get you. So my question was, how has COVID affected your guys' work?
It's just work from home, man. It's just work from home. It's a lot of distractions, but the beauty about the video game industry is there's not really, I mean, like, there's hard deadlines for stuff, but as long as no one's kind of up your ass about some work, you're basically, as long as you get it in when you get it in and no one's up your ass, like, you can kind of, like, if I wanted to work like over the night or whatever and not work in the afternoon, like, I got my work done, no one really cares. So working from home, working in the office is kind of the same thing almost, but like a lot of dev studios have flex time. Like, you can come in at 8 o'clock and leave at 4, or come in at 7, leave at 3. As long as you're there,
as long as your
like
workload's done, basically.
As long as you're there for a brief period of time when everyone schedules meetings, it doesn't matter when you get your work done.
Yeah, I share the same sentiment at Behaviour. We have flex time, which was amazing considering I came from a place that didn't have flex time before. But nevertheless, it's pretty simple. You just get your work done, and I'm kind of going back to the crunch thing. We don't believe in crunch at Behaviour. Like, it's strictly you do your hours, and if you can't fit it in, don't worry about it. If you do extra hours, take some time off next week. We'll figure it out, and
you can chop bits off one week, add some onto another. I think that's a better way of working for sure, because people aren't going to work at their best when they're fatigued, in my opinion.
That's it.
Yeah,
and with work from home, it's a bit understandable that productivity has gone down a bit. I would assume, but the trade-off is, anything, money, or I guess, how do I word it?
Overhead.
What it costs, the overhead for the whole building and everything. You don't really need to use the building anymore, so they kind of balance themselves out, I find. So with COVID and all, I think we're doing really good. People are enjoying working from home, but I remember when I was interviewed that some people have bad living situations. They have roommates that they don't agree with and stuff. So I consider myself lucky. I have my own private space, but that's not not everyone has that luxury, right? So it's up and down. There's some pros and cons. For me, it's a pro to work from home. I get to start between 8 and 10. I just head downstairs. But for other people, they're sitting at their kitchen table. It's not comfortable. They have a stiff desk and a stiff chair and all, and an annoying roommate and stuff like that, or parents and stuff. So it has its pros and cons. But for the most part, they do try to mitigate it with having meetings with I think a psychologist. They have one on site, or one that you can chat with or
That's
set up
good.
Meetings with. Yeah,
isolation's definitely. I can imagine in an industry like that as well, where isolating, maybe if you live on your own, it can be quite a lonely thing. For some people, just going out to work is a good thing. You're not stuck in your house all day. You're not left to sit with your own thoughts, things like that. So yeah, I think a psychologist is actually a really good call for most game developers to have, in the what can I say, as an employee, I guess.
You honestly kind of get used to it. Originally when I started working at Artifice Studio 7 years ago, 8 years ago, a while ago, I was working from home, and it was an adjustment period, a really long one. I was at home all the time. So all I did when I was not working was not be at my house. I left. I went to friends' places, I went to bars, I went to do other stuff. I just needed to get the fuck out of my house. I'm that was when I was in my early 20s, though. Now I'm you
want to be home all the time. You're there with your feet up.
But yeah, but yeah, like, I mean, like, it's a different mindset or whatever. Like, I used to work, it was very funny. I was very productive between 12 and 4, no matter AM or PM, but 12 to 4 o'clock, I was always very productive. So I would work 12 to 4 o'clock in the morning. I would fall asleep and wake up around 11 or noon. And then I would work from 12 to 4. And then I would do whatever until midnight again. And then I would work again. It was perfect. It was glorious.
So, Phil, how's it been for you? Because I know you've got the alpha that launched over the weekend, and I saw on Twitter you guys were doing a stress test at TurtleRock for that as well. You actually challenged people to crash the servers.
Yeah, they are.
How's it been for you?
Very adamant testers, but working from home has been a challenge for me personally because I really like the routine of traveling to the workplace and having the camaraderie of people and like almost like you're working in a shop together. I really like to riff with people, and unfortunately a lot of us just kind of put it on. We sync up for meetings and then we log off and we don't talk to each other, and we've had to make a point to like play games together as co-workers and kind of catch up and be mindful of that because I think we started working from home since March, and that's like remote desktop, like you're working at your home, and then it takes like half a day to implement everything by sending it to like a secure server so you can download it at work and plug it in. So
I was just going to ask that as well. Like, what was the adjustment period with setup at home? Like, does the company source you a computer, or is if you've got your own PC?
Rock's case, they were very, very good at anticipating that this was coming, and they got us set up with a very nice VPN so we can securely get into work and get files and stuff like that. Look at Jira, look at all our planning and stuff. So they had already done such a great job having an internal Confluence and tracking and stuff like that didn't sideline them too much. But the company's absolutely struggled with, a huge part of it is the culture, the people they brought together, and I know we're missing each other big time, and it's hard. It's so hard to maintain that like the unity of a project when everyone's forced to stay home for the time being.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from. Like I said, we were a small group. Like, I always saw the same guy. Like, I've known the guy that I work with for over 10 years now. And we're like, he's like a brother. He's like a cousin. He's like family, and I've known him forever. And
Yeah,
it's just, I talk to him on Teams here and there, but we don't have a conversation every day. Sometimes it's just different than actually seeing him in person.
yeah. There's a buddy. We'd all go on 5-minute walks and just kind of like take 5 minutes to get a load off. And he's like had a kid and all sorts of stuff since like the pandemic. I'm like, man, it's gonna be a different dude when I see him again.
Yeah,
Everyone's
He's gonna
going to be
look
a different
old.
person after this.
he's gonna look old.
Craziness.
It's gonna look like
So-
he had been sleeping.
BigSteak,
Sorry,
one
go
thing
on.
I was going to ask you is, do you think you would have, like, progression-wise and the learning curve, because this is your first job in the industry, do you think you would have learnt more and sort of progressed further if COVID hadn't have hit? If you were able to go into your workplace every day, face-to-face every day, do you think you would have been, like, learnt the ropes quicker and then, in turn, been more productive?
Absolutely. Like there's things like that would have been mentioned to me in passing. In terms of like documentation, like we also use Confluence and Jira for tracking. But there's documentation that might be missing, or it wasn't brought up to me. The knowledge transfer wasn't there. Things would have been transferred in a more efficient way if I'd been speaking to people, sitting with people over the shoulder, doing work and stuff like that. But instead, I had to work the hard way, or learn the hard way. Sorry. But by learning the hard way, I find is the best way for me to learn. So it's hard to say if overall it would be more efficient. I think by far it would be more efficient. It just my personality, going to bring up Bill's point, actually going to work physically, like being there, it puts you in a different mindset. It puts you into this is work. It's time to focus.
Your brain's in that mode, yeah.
No matter what we do, like when we're working from home, there's always going to be a distraction. There's always going to be something that's in the back of your head. Like there's, like a package is coming. I'm expecting a delivery and stuff like that. I forgot my other point, but pretty much Yeah, it's a no-brainer. I think I would have been much further ahead in my career in terms of learning, but that's in due time, I think we'll catch up pretty quick.
Yeah, I think like the general consensus, not just in the gaming industry, but is that if you're at a dedicated place, that is your job. Whether, I've worked in kitchens, I've worked in retail jobs. When you're at work, you know what you're there to do. And the general consensus is that your brain is in that mode, you're there to work. You've got people there, and like Leah just said in chat, that if you're in a team and you're all in that one place, it's very easy to approach a person if you're not sure on something. Whereas when you're working from home, you might have to email, if there's something you don't know how to do, you might have to email the person to then wait for a response from them to figure out how to do the said thing. So
Generally speaking, go on.
I can imagine like jumping into a job that you've never really done before in the middle of a pandemic was like quite crazy.
Yeah,
did price analytics before.
Well, yeah. Here's the thing. Like, I don't do as much analysis anymore.
Okay.
We have a whole data analyst team that does it for me. But when it comes to like ad hoc stuff, I'll just do it myself. But yeah, like just not being there and having those informal chats and that camaraderie and the whole thing like makes it harder to learn things as quick as you probably would. And
sure.
it's I can't wait to get back. I know like we're gonna probably approach like coming back to work like a hybrid way, have the option to work
a few days from home and a few days in the office.
It's very much that in England as well, where you can work from home if it's like something legit, you can do from home. And then
going back to the office, I only work 3 days a week. I would ask, like, can I work 1 day at home and 2 days in the office? Because like I do not work close. I work like an hour and like a minimum an hour away. If there's like no traffic, maybe 50 minutes. With traffic, it's usually about an hour and 15 in the morning, an hour to an hour and 15 in the morning, and usually an hour and a half getting back at night, because for whatever reason at night the traffic's so much worse. It doesn't even make sense. Why is it's all the same people? Why is there so much worse? It doesn't make sense. Anyways, so like I would save so much time, like legit. Like I lose 3 hours of my day half the time, or at least 2 to 3 hours of my day just because of the commute.
And also, I do not miss my commute either. Like I have a pretty beefy commute too. I have maybe 2 hours a day in the car.
Okay.
And it's just like, man, I like having those 2 hours back. I love that part.
Yeah, amazing.
I don't mind driving. I love
I love driving
around and all that stuff. But yeah, when you get that time back, you're like, hoo-wee, that's just a pile.
Do you not feel sort of weird though? Like you jump out of bed and then boom, you're at work. Is that not like
weird? I'm not a big fan of like the office is right there, and then I love the game. So I'm like, I'm not even leaving the computer some days. I'm just like living here like a creature.
Yeah.
You finish work and then go and play games in your own time.
And the rats are all scurrying. I'm just like,
that's the struggle. That's the struggle. Sometimes I'm just at this computer. Like my ass is indented in this chair, and I just got it.
I was gonna say that like like not having those informal chats, we have to force ourselves. So like when it came to learning or speaking to people that I hadn't spoken to, and I had to force myself. When it comes to hanging out with each other, we force ourselves. We have 2 meetings a week that are very informal, just a what's up for 30 minutes kind of with the whole team. We have an hour dedicated to just playing video games with each other. We call it important stuff. That's what it says.
Important stuff. It's like the book clubs. It's like the book club. Important stuff.
It's important stuff. But yeah, forcing yourself to do that's the key to working from home right now. You have to be less shy and approach people and not be afraid to have wasted their time, or not be afraid to ask dumb questions. And when I started, I thought that I asked dumb questions, but moving forward, now that I look back on it, it's definitely benefited me. So asking dumb questions.
You can't be afraid to ask questions.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of weird in a sense, that how you said, even though we're all kind of stuck at home and isolated, that's making you more social in like your work life, like approaching people. You'd expect it kind of to be the other way around, but the fact that it's sort of making you like push yourself to learn. Do you think that's just generally you as a person, or?
I wouldn't say that's me as a person. I'm one to just kind of go with the flow and not question things. I think me as a person, I like just knowing by myself and not asking questions. I like figuring things out myself, but it comes to a point where, like you said, this is a new job I know nothing about, so I have to go out of my comfort zone, and I think that makes me a better person overall. That's a good learning experience, just to push yourself out of your comfort zone, ask people that you don't know random questions about things that they might not know, but at least they'll direct you to the right person. But that's all part of the new job.
I mean, that's kind of me. Like right now, like I play a lot of games, but I know nothing about making them, and I probably ask some dumb questions where you guys are just like, "What the fuck?" But
Nah, you haven't.
I don't think
Pretty.
so. A lot of times, players can ask questions that may, like we mentioned how we work so hard in the game and we don't see things in a certain way, and maybe players see things. Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
so it's
dude,
nice getting...
I will not front. I have said some bad things about Dead by Daylight playing it on stream. Holy Lord, I have said some awful things, and I'd still probably say them knowing you work there. Like, I'm not gonna. If I'm not enjoying a game, it's gonna come out. Like, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Some of the things that people complain about and say, it's like some things that either can't really be fixed because they probably talked about them before in development and stuff like that, and they're just like, this is the way it is because of specific reasons and stuff like that. It's not that they haven't seen this, but there's not an easy fix to it, maybe, or it's just how they designed it, and there may be a good reason to design it the way that it is.
That's a lot of times what Phil said before we started about smurfing and whatnot, going back to the older podcast where we talked about smurfing. Like, you just can't... I mean, people are going to do it, but there's just no way to balance it or stop it.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can't stop people from making new accounts other than, like looking at their IP and being like... But then you don't know if it's a different person making another account. You can't just be like, oh, no, every IP only gets one account. Like, I mean, that's not what you can do.
Warzone had, like, so many cheaters, and for a while they made it so you have to put your phone number in on every account. And it stopped it for a month or so, and then people just started buying like dollar SIMs from a store and just connecting it and then getting the verification code. You can't stop it. Oh, yeah. Like, it's just a rife problem that you can't stop. And go on, BigSteak, sorry.
You gotta consider bandwidth too, like human resources. Basically, like, we have, let's just say, 200 problems, but we only can solve 20 this month.
Yeah, there's
what do we prioritize? And it's hard. It's really tough. You have to make some tough decisions.
Bugs have a priority list.
Yeah.
And again, going back to Warzone again, obviously that's primarily the game I play on stream. That game has had issue after issue after issue, and I complain about them time and time again, but I can't know what the developers are doing or what teams are working on to try and fix it. There's been the Juggernaut glitch where people can clone Juggernauts and 4 people run around as one in Warzone. There's been broken guns that are like quite evidently broken. They just shit on you, and if you don't use that gun, you get shat on. You're forced to use that gun. But there's only so much you can do, and I'm guessing you have to kind of prioritize what you want to deal with first.
Well, the thing with Warzone too, I mean, like, you're thinking about battle royales. It's not like you can find that gun everywhere, right? So it's an advantage if you actually do find it. And but at the same time, you're playing in a gigantic open world. You have to have rewards like that. The whole point of actually going out to the world to explore, it's risk reward. You might find that gun, which will help you shit on people, or you can play it safe, have shit guns, but then you won't find that gun. Maybe someone else does, but maybe they might lose anyways. I mean, sure, yeah, everyone has to use that gun, but I mean, like, not everyone's gonna find it. I mean, like, that's that like wouldn't say that's necessarily broken. It gets balanced in the fact by how much that gun is readily available. If it was like, if you can find it like 75% of your runs and a lot of people have it, and then the one time you don't have it, then I would say that's broken. But I mean, like, if you get like, if only like maybe 5 people in the 100 people find it, I find that's more of a risk reward type of searching thing than anything else. Like, I'm sure they've thought of stuff like that, and like you might think it's completely broken, but I mean, like, it's impossible to balance all those guns in the first place, other than having one fucking gun for the entire thing, and then everything's completely balanced. And you have different things like SMGs, you have to get really close, or you have snipers from far away, whatever. There's different ways to play, and so then you can have different types, and then that's it. Do you have one gun for every type, or you have different guns? Like, there's multiple ways to think about it, but I mean, like, how would you want them to fix that, Fozzy?
I mean, I was actually thinking about this, knowing kind of that, going back to Overwatch, knowing Phil's like worked on that, is at one point they introduced hero bans, because it got to a point where certain heroes had such high pick rates that nobody was playing any other characters, or one strat is better than the other. So I was thinking maybe like change the floor loot once a week, and maybe like ban weapons for a week where that weapon's not readily available in your loadout for a week or so. It just keeps the game fresh. I mean, I don't know how much you worked on like balance of Overwatch, Phil, or how involved you were with that, but I mean,
wasn't very involved with Overwatch on that level. I mostly did some like preliminary help with some of the systems and outsourcing. But to speak to the point, it is really challenging to kind of build a game and to say something like a card game like Magic the Gathering. Like, okay, it's still a card game, so if we're just looking at like a regular deck of cards, like how many extra cards can we add before we break poker? But you have to know you're making poker. You have to know the rules of your game, and you're like, well, we can make like, instead of 4 suits, maybe there's 8 suits, and design intelligently around that. But if you're a big company like Activision, you might be motivated by a completely different thing. Like, these are just progression rewards. This is stuff that only a top tier of the player community is going to get, so that makes it unique. And someone's already made a call on like a very high vision level of just like, no, I want the game to be that hard. I want a certain level of people to feel like they're shit on if they're not good, and a certain amount of people
That's true.
Gratified by the exclusivity of being good at this game and getting rewards that only they can get. And, you might be dealing with something like that. You never know. And I think Overwatch has, gone above and beyond trying to be fair. And you just don't know how people are going to abuse your systems if you give them so much control.
I mean, they've tried everything. They've tried role lock, hero bans, and they're kind of...
It becomes so thorough, and like you end up kind of giving up and considering other things. Like, okay, well, so what if we have mirror matches? So what if like both teams,
the team compositions are the same all the time?
You start kind of like trying to give and take with it, but ultimately you're like, man, if there's someone just being a butthole, like the best thing you can do is reinforce like the positive team play and kind of figure out that path of encouraging the people who are playing it right and the people who are breaking the system. Like, they'll always be there.
Yeah, there's always going to be someone trying to abuse the system in anything in life.
With a game like Overwatch as well, I feel like if you're good at one role, say tank or an off support, they're usually the people that lead teams. If one person is better in that role than the person in the same role on the other team, then that team's probably going to win. Like, certain roles have bigger impacts in the game.
It's true, but that's where, like, the whole point of Overwatch is almost trying to set itself up like chess. That's why there's multiple characters for the same role, right?
Yeah,
Trying to look at the other
counter
team
pick, yeah.
composition and you try to counter them. It's the same thing in League of Legends, and League of Legends has bans also and stuff like that. And they have so many characters that they increased how many bans people had, because I think they used to have 3 and now they have 5, or they might have only had 1 before and then they added 3 and now they have 5. And it's like, the bigger you make something, the more you have to expand it, the easier it is for something to break, just because it's hard to balance all that stuff. Like, making games ain't easy.
No, and think of how many like actual sports we play where we ban people. Where it's like, no, you can't use Michael Jordan. What? Like, we would always use Michael Jordan. Like, but it's a real problem. Like when you add that many top players to the game and that many tools, like we're not playing basketball. Everyone's like Monster Squad, right? Like, oh man, I'm.
It was
Anyways, but yeah, that's like my point is like, you know, the rosters have to have those imbalances, and that's a really hard thing to anticipate and build in flawed things so you can progress.
See, for me, the thing with Warzone, I don't mind everyone running around using the same gun, like Overwatch, everyone picking the same team comp, because then you're all on the same level, and if you lose, 9 times out of 10, the other player was just better than you, was smarter than you, or outplayed you. But in Warzone, for me, it's like random little variables that can change team fights, or if you're playing solos and it's a 1v1 situation, things like stopping power rounds that give you like extra damage, and if you're using the same gun as them but they have stopping power rounds, they have extra damage, so they kill you. And like dead silence, for instance, where that can randomly change a fight, where if they just run up to you with dead silent, you are honestly dead silent. It doesn't just quieten them down, it makes them exactly quiet. You can't do anything.
My one advice to you would be stop playing battle royales. Unfortunately, they're built like that.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
That's the problem. I mean,
but I just think you could minimize, like, the Apex, in my opinion, have gone a good way. Apex Legends have gone a good way about, when that game first launched, there was a lot of variables. Someone could pick up a better armor than you, or they could pick up a Phoenix kit, which just gives them full health and armor again. But now they've made it so if you go out and play aggressive, the more damage you do, the more your shield levels up. So if you go out and play aggressive, it's better. It's trying to like get you to engage and not sit in a building, and the variables aren't there as much. I do like the balance of Apex Legends.
Yet you still only play Warzone.
Yeah, it's just got me addicted, but I don't want to keep you guys for too long.
Like, have the right nerve or the IP, like.
Yeah, something just clicks. I mean, like I tried Fortnite. I played with like one of my buddies or whatever, just for fun. I mean, like I like arcadey shooters and the shooterness of it and the walking around. I like that. I hate the building. It's garbage. It's so dumb. If it was just literally a third-person shooter that was like Apex, but it was Fortnite, I'd be down for it. But then there's Apex came out, and I never ended up playing it. But it seemed more intriguing than Fortnite. And then I just never ended up playing it. I don't.
One thing I will say about Fortnite is, there is that random variable of BR there, where you land, you're going to find a random set of guns. There's no, like, set loot. The loot is always different. I'm not sure if, like, the busier places have the better loot. That tends to be the case with Apex. So if you make the choice to land somewhere busy, you're probably going to find the higher level weapons.
How does that work in Warzone, then?
Warzone, I would say, is completely random, in honesty. But with Fortnite, I cannot play that game simply because of what you said. There is a skill gap there. It's not just the building's trash. It's that there are people that have played this game for hours and hours since launch, like
hundreds, thousands.
Yeah, exactly. And the skill gap now between me and them is massive. I'm never going to catch them up.
360 build a box around themselves as soon as you start shooting at them. I was like,
exactly.
Oh, there's a guy. He doesn't see me. Shoot him in the back. He builds a fucking tower around him. I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm just not going to play this game. Fuck this.
That's me. And there's that skill gap there now where I'm just like, yeah, I'm not going to play that. I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to catch up to them people. That's not a fun experience, just getting shot on every game. And if you don't get to that level, it starts putting you in games with bots now. And
really?
Playing against bots just isn't that fun either, knowing there's nobody on that other side and that you've outplayed them or you're better than that person. Like, a bot's just stupid.
Hey, you're better than the computer. Computers are smart, Fozzie, okay?
Look at the ones that play chess.
Look at the ones that play chess.
But actually going to Gambit's question, because as I said, I don't want to keep you guys too long. If you guys want to... This is not an advert. These guys here of their own accord, by the way. YouTube, do not ban this or demonetize it if I ever get that far. What games... We've already discussed it, but we can go back over it. What games are you guys working on, and when can we expect to play them, and where? Who wants to go first? Hashtag ad, not.
I'm just working on Dead by Daylight. It's up now on pretty much everything, including mobile. Even Stadia
Oh
for
yeah,
like the 12 players that are on Stadia.
The 12 players that are on.
but they're
Big-
all playing Dead by Daylight. Okay.
They're all playing Dead by Daylight. Oh man, they've
Do
got a
a
pretty
Phill-
good voting system there. Anyway, sorry, go on, Duo.
I'm working on a game called Wicca. It is a hero defense game, sort of. It's like a redefining hero defense. It's got time travel mechanics, which is pretty sick. Like a time travel mechanic that you don't really see in games because you can actually play with yourself. I know that sounds horribly lewd, but basically you can run around and everything you do is recorded. And then when you go back in time, you'll have like a double version of yourself doing exactly what you just did, and you can follow it and fight alongside with it, or you can go somewhere else and just know that will do exactly what you did. And if you accomplish their task, you just go somewhere else and do something else. It's actually really cool. You're basically a witch in 16th century Scotland. It's pretty sick. It's looking really good. Like a way, like we had like a demo video of like how the gameplay was like last year that came out, and then this year we like it's so much better. Like it looks so much. It's oh man, and we got co-op, and the co-op's looking pretty sick. Like I'm very excited. I don't know when it's coming out. Hopefully sometime in the next 6 months, but we don't have a concrete date. But it will be on PC, and if it does well enough,
have you played Beyond Two Souls?
I don't know. Sorry?
Have you played Beyond Two Souls? Sorry to interrupt you.
I have not.
So in Beyond Two Souls, there's like a spirit that's like part of the main character. I don't want to. The game's really old, so I don't really care if I spoil it. If you haven't played it yet, it's kind of on you.
I'm not planning on it, but tell me.
They have like
ruined the experience for me,
they ruined my question now that there's like a third-person view that you can pull out there. I was going to ask if your game's anything like that, like the same kind of like concepts, but obviously you haven't played Beyond Two Souls.
I haven't played Beyond Two Souls, but the third person thing, we have this like mode where you can like come out of your body, you'll have like you basically take your spirit out of your body stays where it was, and you can fly around the map and cast spells and shit. But if you have another version of yourself, you can follow it along and like help it with spells and shit. Like we specifically made levels where you're forced to look at yourself and do stuff along with it, which is a really cool experience because you like, even if you see 2 or 3 versions of yourself running around and you're trying to like float and cast spells to help them fight shit at the same time, it's really cool.
Phill, how about you?
I am working on Back 4 Blood, which just premiered at the Game Awards on December 15th. Very, very excited to finally have that revealed. I've been participating with the team at TurtleRock on that game for about 2 years now. Started in 2018, and it's a very, very close to my heart little undertaking because when I worked on Starcraft 2, we pretty much lived at the studio when we were putting out the first installation in 2010, and every break, lunch and dinner, we were playing Left 4 Dead. And
I'm a huge fan of Left 4 Dead.
Yeah, huge fan of Left 4 Dead, and Phill and Chris have gotten an opportunity of a lifetime to make basically a sequel to a game that they've already made before, and I just kind of get to be a fly on the wall and enjoy participating and helping them make that progress. So the alpha test is underway, and it's supposed to come out next summer, sometime in June, and I'm very, very excited. It's a great opportunity to get to work on stuff that you actually like have been inspired by the previous installments of a game and get to work on a sequel like this. It's very, very fortunate, and I'm having a blast doing a bunch of stuff for them.
So I haven't played the alpha yet, but how close can we expect that to be to Left 4 Dead? And like, how has the game moved on for the better from Left 4 Dead?
I can't really speak to those points specifically, just because if I say anything that like gets tracked by the media, it would be like Phill said this, and so I truthfully am just kind of participating with the alpha with everyone else on the level of this is the most people who've gotten to kind of see and interact with the game, and just like we've been talking about, we're seeing the game kind of perform on a level we've never seen it perform before, and you just don't get that stress testing from the studio environment, and it's really critical to do it. And we play test this game all the time, so even as ready as we are, like, they're learning a ton of stuff, and it's nice and early. We have a lot of time to get things in a good place before the game comes out.
No matter how ready you are, you're never ready.
You get as ready as you think you can get, and then you're like, and no one knows what you don't make it to, but you always like have that nagging feeling.
Oh, for
It's
sure.
like your features or things you want to contribute, and it's like, it's good, but it could have been juicier. And they're like, what are you talking about? You're like, I know. You get too close to it. You want your kid to be a champ.
Yeah, I get that. We're excited for Back 4 Blood, by the way. We're super hyped.
That's
I'm very
behavior.
happy to hear that.
Yeah, the minute I saw like a follow up to Left 4 Dead, I was like, that's it. Like I probably sunk 200, 300 hours into Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 each. Like I've still got Jazz has got her original copy of Left 4 Dead in the shelf down there. But it's on Xbox, so I think I need to get the Steam version to like get the better experience of it again. I always played it on 360 as a teenager though, like going around to a friend's house. We'd always do co-op campaign. Just so fun.
It's a very, very fun game, and something I admire the art director Phill Robb about a lot is he is a huge horror fan. And he talks about like, in this zombie film and this zombie film, and he's all about like
he's seen them all.
Yeah, you're living through the craziest zombie film he can make, and it really helps us understand like, okay, so we're not being silly. We're being like, the tone of this game is very, very like serious, and if there's levity, it's kind of to cut the tension between the next like crazy event. And it helps so much to have a guy who's that much of an enthusiast for a genre say like, I want to make the best zombie horror game we can make, and let's not go overboard. Let's just make an awesome zombie horror game. And that to me, I love that dedication, because when you think about Left 4 Dead, it's a pretty simple concept, but if it's not done right, you know it kind of feels like it's missing. Like it's got to feel gamey.
Like Gambit just said as well, where like the stories, it's like 5 episodes. No Mercy, in my opinion, is like one of the most iconic things in a game I've ever seen. I must have played through that so many times, and trying to do dumb achievements where you complete it on like the hardest difficulty with no friendly fire is just so crazy. Yeah. I spent hours doing that achievement. It was just so painful. I did it probably after about 100 hours. It's so rough. But go on, sorry.
One of the first games I played through where I cared about not like a friendly fire playthrough, like trying to play through with my friends and be like, are we good enough to like not accidentally blow someone's shoulder off? And, that was one of the first games I felt like truly rewarded pulling that off.
I've been playing Left 4 Dead 2 with a couple of buddies the last number of weeks or whatever. Never really played it before. I shoot everybody. It's terrible.
Yeah, like I have a friend that plays Zoe, and we'd always just troll him and light him up for fun. Team, it's not
usually how we're about to leave, and it's like, okay, good night, and then just
and then
dying in the safe house.
Fire in the caboose.
Yeah.
Safe free.
Also, I think it's the like first Left 4 Dead being like the first experience where you could like play as the zombies, not the actual. The ads zombies, I'd say, but the special zombies like the tank and the boomer, I'd say that's like the first thing we've really seen.
They're so broken sometimes. It's so annoying.
The hunter, is it the hunter? I think he's called. It's been a while since I've played it. The one that jumps on you.
That's the
and all that stuff.
The one that jumps on you is the he's like the jockey.
Oh, the jockey. Yeah, that's Left 4 Dead 2. Yeah. And you've got the smoker.
The smoker, yeah.
If there was ever a zombie apocalypse, that'll be me. 20 a day.
All he does is like freaking latch his tongue on you.
Yeah.
Freaking smoker.
So going over to Gambit's point, I think we're at like the hour 20 mark. We said like an hour and a half. If anyone in chat has any questions for the guys, feel free to ask away now. We saved this till last. So if you have any questions for Phill, BigSteak, or Duo, feel free to ask them now. We'll give it a minute so chat opens up, and then Gambit. Phill, can we get tequila?
Can I get a what?
Said, can we get tequila?
I wish I drank it all already.
Oh,
Give people a few seconds to type. We had Silence Lear in here. If you guys have any questions, shoot it.
I don't know. Just kind of doing our business. What do you guys got for holiday vacation? Like studios usually just shut down for like 2 weeks at Christmas. It's crazy.
Oh, there's a weird
Every
time.
studio I've ever worked at always had like 2 weeks off at Christmas. Like
There's
they
a weird
just
time
like, yep,
between Christmas and New Year where you don't know what day it is, what planet you're on. It's just no matter what line of work. The only place that's never happened to me is kitchens. Like when I worked in
restaurants
kitchens.
don't close.
Yep.
Yeah,
There's one from Leah.
Staying local for the vacation, but I'm kind of looking forward to it. Just like no holiday travel, just being nice and relaxed, being a layabout, playing games. So I'll be fine with
It'd be
that.
sweet.
Leah said, how do you guys feel about the apology of management from Cyberpunk and Sony's decision to pull it from their store?
I mean, Sony did it because of the outcry, and the apology was because of the outcry. Like, I think any studio would do the exact same thing if this sort of outcry happened before. I think the reason why they had like, let's say the December 10 deadline was the first deadline and they never pushed it back and then it came out this buggy, people would have said, oh, you should have pushed it back, you should have pushed it back. Remember Final Fantasy 14? That had to relaunch.
Yeah.
Jas plays that game religiously now.
Relaunch. It was so bad. It was so bad that Square Enix pulled it, apologized, and then had a rebirth. They actually fucking renamed the game.
They had it baked into the lore that they kind of like blew up whatever it was of the original 14, which is kind of funny. But I mean, what I feel about the apology that happened with CD Projekt Red, I mean, if anyone's fault, if it's anyone's fault, it's probably the investors or the higher ups who had pushed them a bit too far. So if we look back on this in like 2-3 years, I think we'll be fine. I think they'll be fine. What I think is a bit too much is Sony pulling the game.
Not
I
really
feel like
giving them chance to fix it.
Well, they'll get a chance to fix it. Sony's going to put it back for sure. I've heard people saying that Sony said they're not going to, and that would be the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
I think given the fact that we live in COVID only in the news kind of life right now, that Cyberpunk has got a lot of attention, a bit, and then I guess the hatred and the negativity around this whole release is exponentially worse because of it, because there's nothing else to talk about right now.
There's been a lot of AAA games in like the last generation of consoles for me, PlayStation and Xbox. I mean, most people think I only play Warzone because that's what I played for the last year or so. But there's been a lot of like launches for me that have been hugely disappointed. I mean, Destiny was brought out as this huge open world game that everyone could kind of go out and do whatever they want on this massive scale. And I did put like 500 hours into Destiny and then 200 hours onto Destiny 2.
Can you really say you're disappointed after shoving that much time into it?
Yeah, I can.
I mean, like, you still pump that much time into it.
Yeah, but that's nothing in comparison to some of the people that I know who still play it to this day.
That's fair, but I mean, like, it's not like you played 20 hours, you're like, this is dog shit.
What about Red Dead Redemption 2? I mean, you listed that as like an impressive game earlier for me. I was kind of disappointed by it. I'm not going to lie.
There are some people that absolutely adore it, and there are some people that are definitely disappointed with it just because of what they did. Their design choices. It's very realistic. It's very slow. Some people do not like that. They made it overly realistic and not enough of a game. And for some people, that was too much.
I mean, I don't think I finished the campaign, and I played a little bit of online, and I feel like Rockstar at the beginning made it so difficult for free-to-play players to actually... I mean, you've paid $60 for the game, and you guys who work in games, you're probably going to be like, what a douchebag. But I feel like if you've paid $60 for a game, there has to be a certain point where you support online and then monetize it after that said time. Like maybe be transparent with people where you say, we're going to add this much to the game and that's what you'll get to play for free. That's what Final Fantasy 14 does, that Jazz plays. And then after that, they're transparent and say you may have to pull out your wallet here if you don't want to slog to progress in the game.
That is unfortunately the problem with free online games. They have to be kept as an upkeep. If you're paying a subscription for it, then it would be completely different. But you're not paying a subscription. You bought the game and it comes with an online mode, and they're charging you microtransactions. Like it's a business. They're trying to make money. They're not forcing anyone to pay anything other than making it a slog, which you do not have to do.
Red Dead is coming out with a subscription next year. I think I saw. Red Dead, I think, is coming out with a subscription where you only buy the
online game. They're also releasing just Red Dead Online. That is a standalone thing that you can pay a subscription for. You don't have to buy the game. That's a completely different thing.
Reel off so many games I've been disappointed with. Gears 4 and 5.
How come you were disappointed?
I mean, the campaigns, like, it's hard to live up to like Marcus Phoenix and Dom because they're fucking badass characters, but like his son and I can't even remember.
That's the problem with sequels. I'm afraid for when they kill off Kratos. They made his son. He's gonna grow up. He's going to be the God of War at some point, and then there's going to be a gigantic reckoning in the God of War series.
And again, not just like with Gears 4 and 5 story, but we talked about the flashbang and the weapon balancing in it on the other podcast where I just said it was just... I don't know if it's because when I was 13, 14, I'd just come home from school, play a game, and that's all I had to worry about, and like the nostalgia of it's there. Or if it's just because games are genuinely worse nowadays. I just can't...
Maybe you're a very competitive person. Maybe your skills have gotten worse, and so as you lose, you get more frustrated.
Maybe. But it's never my fault. It's always the lag, the controller, the PC.
It's always the lag. Always the lag.
I'll get back to the questions because we've got a few more from Gambit and Leah. Gambit said, I think the media itself had something to do with it too. Everyone turning the game into a joke about it being delayed. Granted, I'm also guilty of making jokes. He said, do you guys play any other games? And that he had fun with Dick Vision 2, which is Division 2.
Oh, yeah. Well, we played a lot of Division. We called it Dick Vision 2 because I kept shooting everyone in the dick.
Their other head, the other headshot.
I had to make it a little more interesting, so we played a bunch of times just aiming for their crotches. Those were good days.
Yeah. Nobody asked, what non-game related thing are we into?
Oh, I missed that one. Good shout. Yeah, go ahead. What other non-game related things are you into? You love hockey. So does BigSteak, the fans of Montreal Canadiens. Anything else, Phil, Duo, BigSteak?
I've been playing Vermintide 2 a lot. I am a big fan of the Warhammer, like mythology and universe of Warhammer Fantasy, and I didn't really play War of the Roses, which I believe was Fat Shark's original attempt, or it was Chivalry, one of those two. I didn't play a lot of that, but I was really like interested in what they're going to do with Vermintide, given the theme, and I'm a huge fan, and I've been trying to get like really good at that game for the past like 6 months. So I generally put in like an hour or two here and there, and just hit 400 hours on it and having a blast, like chopping up rats. So that's what I do with my free time when I'm not like helping out make games myself.
BigSteak, how about you?
I'm into a variety of things. I guess I'm like a jack of all trades, master of none. I like cooking, collecting things such as sneakers, different types of cologne, perfumes, fountain pens. I'm just I try to make an educated purchase for everything I buy, and then that turns into a hobby in itself, because I'd make too many educated purchases, and then
I remember having a conversation about that, about you being frugal. on everything. Like when you go to the supermarket, was it you where you mentioned you go to like 3 different supermarkets because stuff's cheaper, or was that somebody else?
What I do is I had a spreadsheet where I list each supermarket, and then on the left column, Phil's laughing at
I
me.
knew it was you who I talked to it about.
I would list the items I normally buy, and then put down the prices, and then I would only go to one store, and I would only pick the store that had the best deal of the bunch. So, like, yeah, you might lose out on a couple of items, but you win overall. I do not like going to 3 stores for like it's just a waste of time. I can't believe people do that. Like my dad.
Maybe
does
I
that.
got that wrong. I knew I spoke to you something about that, about you being frugal, and then when you broke out the spreadsheet, I was like, yeah, it was you.
He just bought a house. He needs to be frugal. He's got to pay a mortgage.
Well, now it's a bit different. I'm more lazy, so I just do pick up. I buy stuff over the app, usually Walmart, or we have a place called Maxi, which is like a budget kind of grocery store or whatever. Anyway, long story short, one place only now. Nobody's got time for that, as they say.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
I'm doing that wrong on purpose. Okay.
So Phil, what exactly is the Gigapig?
The Gigapig is a 1969 El Camino
Shit.
I am lifting into a 4-wheel drive El Camino, and then I'm gonna put Mad Max crap all over it. It's gonna have like a nasty grill and skulls and exhaust pipes and everything else. So my dad, dude, I'm looking forward to it. My dad still lives on the ranch I grew up on in the Central Coast of California, and the Gigapig's been sitting up there for a few years. It's been like a pet project where I'm like, dude, I have the money to do this. I should just start building my project car now. And my dad's like, yeah, what do you want to do? And we're like, in the shop, and every time we see each other, we get a little done. They're like, okay, what's next? And he tells me the next parts to buy, and we're getting the radiator all hooked up right now. So it'll be moving and screaming soon, and I'm planning on just making the most obnoxious looking car out of it and having a blast driving around the desert and being a goon.
That's sick.
That's really cool.
We got a lot of questions. Leah said, as people who are in game development, what do you personally think a good game needs to have, and what an amazing game needs to have? So I'm assuming like what makes a good game, and then what puts it up into like 10 out of 10 dogs nuts.
I'm not even sure I know.
Yeah.
Different things are different things are different things for different people. I mean, like, there's no one amazing or good game that each of the 3 of us will. I mean, we might agree on a couple of them, but we'll easily come up with different games for sure.
I think
thing with you, Fozzie.
Games have very consistent rules. Chess, checkers. There's like when the fundamentals are there and it's intuitive to learn a game. If you can intuitively teach something, that's a great game. If it's just
true,
a well-designed game, there's lots of well-designed games, but if you can make people gravitate towards it by watching you play, or just kind of experiencing themselves, and they're like, oh, I'm learning stuff being on the field. I think that's why a lot of the major sports that we do watch on a huge level, we can all kind of understand them. We can, figure out what sports ball or kick soccer or, football thing, how these games work, and kind of extrapolate and understand strategies. And that's what makes us all spectators and want us to be part of the game itself. So
do you think that's part of the reason? Sorry to interrupt. Do you think that's part of the reason, like, esports has such a big viewer base? Like, yeah, people will support teams and home teams, but they'll watch to learn things as well in their own game.
Yeah. I mean, expectation is a huge part of what's made games blow up even more, because when we all have a deck of cards, we think we know a lot about cards, and then we like start playing games with each other, like, oh wow, this guy's a real wizard, like he's counting numbers or whatever it is. Like, then you see the game played on a whole nother level, and if that inspires you to get better or makes you want to watch it, like, that's badass.
For sure. So how I learned how to play better in foosball, like, you see someone, like, you think you're good, and then you play someone that actually knows how to play foosball, and you're like, holy shit, what the fuck is this? And then you start like actually trying to do that stuff, and then you get better, and then you see someone that's just like Man, me and my friend used to go to a bar and we'd be like, "Hey, you wanna go play those chumps?" Because there'd be a couple of people playing foosball, and we're like, "Hey, there's some chumps over there," so we go play them and we smoke them. And then
It
every
does
once in a while, where are the chumps? Where are the chumps? Not usually, but like 90% of the time we smoke people, and then every once in a while some guy comes and you're like, "Holy shit, what is
Yeah,
this
the
guy
smokers
even
don't
doing?" It just blows your mind. But it's the same thing in games. Like you see guys like do loops and shit, and you're like, "How did he even do that?" It makes no sense. So yeah,
Mhm.
expectation, yeah, for sure, I'd agree with that. But I mean, like, it's not for everyone. Like, I don't watch a lot of esports. Like, I don't play those kinds of competitive games. But I love sports. I watch hockey. I play hockey. It depends what
Mhm.
you like. I'm sure you
Yeah.
watch Warzone because you enjoy that. And when I played League of Legends, I watched a couple of matches here and there. But like, since I stopped playing League of Legends, I don't really care.
League of
Yeah, have
Legends is something I've
participation.
never got into.
I'll,
Gambit
you
says, "What are your opinions on copy and paste quests in games?"
copy and paste quests in games.
Yep,
Probably not good.
The problem with
not
that is it's
immersive at
like
all.
you're trying to add content sometimes, so you come up with a few different mission types, and then you try to come up with compelling stories that kind of reuse that. Like in my game right now, like we probably have about 20 something missions I think we're hitting, like low 20s or high teens, something like that as far as missions. But they're all incredibly unique. There's not really too much repeat on what we're doing. But if we were to balloon that, we'd probably end up getting repeats because there's only so many ideas that you either have or that you have time to actually do. And if we started to make more levels, we'd probably end up reusing old maps because we just don't have time to make new maps. It takes like if we still had maps to make or whatever, and if it takes like a month and a half to 2 months to actually make a full map, even if you're making 3 maps at the same time or whatever, it's still gonna like even cycling them or whatever, it's still gonna take you like 4 or 5, 6 months just for those 3 maps. And that's just for 3 maps. So if you're able to save time anywhere, anywhere, like you're gonna do it because it takes forever to make this. We've already been making it for like 3 years. And
Call of
like,
Duty is the king of that, where if you fly around Battle Royale, you can see pieces or whole other multiplayer maps that they've just copy pasted in, or then there's parts of the BR that they've took out and put as multiplayer maps and just copy pasted them in. Like you see a lot of that in Call of Duty, where they've just copy pasted maps and transferred them into a different game mode.
I mean, same thing with RPGs. Like people like either hate or love the whole grind, right? But it's the same thing with copy and paste quests too, right? You might want to keep doing it for XP, and that's the reason why it's there. It serves its purpose not as a filler, but to boost up XP, make your life easier overall. So similar to RPGs, like it has its place, I would say.
Leah
no.
said she was talking to someone about Dark Souls, and someone says it's a good game because it compels you to play it. But she says it's an okay game because of that, but you need the story to be up front. That's what makes it a good game for her.
that's what makes it a good game for you, right? Other people love it just because of the challenge, the sheer challenge it gives them in the gameplay. They don't give a shit about story.
I played Dark Souls 1 and 2, and I finished them both just out of spite. Like, the first boss alone gave me a challenge, and I was like, right, I will finish this game just out of spite. Like, you want to make a game unnecessarily difficult? I will finish it just to say I've done it. I have no idea where the story went, how it ended, what it fit. Like, I felt no semblance of, like, here's the destination, and this is what happened in Dark Souls. Just unfulfilling spite in completing the game. And I never even played 3. I was just like, hell no, it's not happening.
And maybe that's what the difference is between a good game and a great game. Like if you have a game with a great lore, for example, like I like Destiny a lot, Destiny 1 and 2. I sunk in at least 100 hours into each, I would like to say. But there's no lore per se. It's all through text or something. It's like hard to get to, or it's not easily accessible through like video or some kind of audio. So I think what makes a great game is to have an experience. So like for example, I always take Journey as one of my most favorite games because it's such a great experience to play a couple of times. You can play it 2-3 times and have different experiences because you're playing with someone else, but you're not speaking to them, so you have to learn to communicate without speaking, which is why I hold it so dearly. It just it like kind of changed my view on short games. You don't have to. A game doesn't have to be long for the sake of being long. And it could still be as good as any other game. Granted, there's the whole if it's a $60 game versus like a $50 game, then we're talking something different. But
so Leah said, I'm going to finish the game. She's referring to Dark Souls just to beat the bosses, but she has no clue what the fuck the story is, and she's 6 bosses in. And I'm the same. I don't know if the game was just I wouldn't say too complex for me to understand story-wise, or maybe I was just so blinded by the spite of like not wanting to play it, but again with like Leah wanting to get through it and beat the bosses. I mean, some of the parts just to get to the next bosses are difficult in themselves, and then when you get to the boss fight, like you just get wiped in one shot, and then basically everything respawns and you have to make your way back to that boss again. And it's good, like, you can farm the XP off those fights in between, but sometimes I don't know if I just didn't understand the game or the concept of it or whatnot. I had a friend explain it to me who was nerding out about it on a stream, and I still didn't get it. I was just like, what the hell is going on?
It depends on the gamer. Some people can do without much story. I mean, I would say Dark Souls or the Soulsborne series is more dependent on players being satisfied with getting through a game by knowing that they weren't cheated, or they didn't feel so cheap. But yeah, at the same time, I feel like story is important, but it depends. Like everyone is talking about, it's hard to fit in all that. When it comes down to a game, like, we have a timeline, we have a deadline for this game to be released and everything. So sometimes things have to be cut where they need to be, where developers don't think it is so necessary, where developers think it's a better gamble to put more bandwidth, more human resources into better mechanics and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I do like a good story game, but I do like the fast pace, like, in between it, and Dark Souls didn't offer, like, the fast-paced for me. Like Gears of War, like the gore in that game and like the pace of it for me is perfect. Even if you play, like, I've finished them all on Insane, and I like the challenge. Like, that's just the right amount of, like, still difficult but not stupid enough that you can't pay attention to the story and the cutscenes in between.
Ozzy, you just gotta get good.
Oh, dude, I will never play Dark Souls 3. 1 and 2 is just torture enough.
Apparently 2 is terrible.
2 is dreadful, yeah. It was.
You gotta get a PlayStation and play some Bloodborne, or try Sekiro. Sekiro's like way different, but
I am gonna try Sekiro on stream.
Play Jedi Fallen Order. It's like a Soulsborne where you can adjust the difficulty. It's like, honestly, my experience with that, the only reason I actually got into it is because of the lore of Bloodborne, and I almost actually gave up on it until I saw a very specific video on YouTube for it, and it was talking about the Lovecraft inside the game and how the game sort of starts off with like witches and werewolves, and then it evolves into this like Lovecraft thing with like aliens and old ones and all this shit about going insane, and it's just so different compared to all the other ones. And like the setting helps. Like I played Demon Souls. I love medieval stuff. It seemed like it was my type of thing. I got it for PS3. I played like maybe 2 hours of it, 3 hours, and I just had so much anxiety of dying all the time. I'm like, I never continued playing it. I was not drawn in by Dark Souls at all. And then Bloodborne, they were releasing it, the Victorian era, the gothic look to it. Like, it just seems so different. And I was intrigued by that. And then I started playing it, and the same sort of dread came over me about Demon Souls. And then I saw this video. I can't remember what brought me to watch this video. I think I might have seen it, like my friend might have shown it to me or something like that. And I just like, okay, I'm going to give this game another shot. And then I just fell like in love with the game. And I got more used to dying. Like, you have to be okay with dying in the first part. And the one thing with these games is that they're very skewed to be incredibly difficult at the very beginning. and
Yeah.
that pushes people away. It's not accessible in that regards, because after the first initial, like maybe 4 to 5 hours, you either get used to dying, or you get abilities, you get equipment, you get skills, and you have survivability. Because the problem is, at the very beginning, everything fucking kills you, and then afterwards, only bosses kill you. Because when
I
you can
mean-
actually walk around the world and you're not dying from pleb enemies, it's a completely different experience than just dying from everything. Like in Demon Souls, almost everything kills you. It's terrible. It's just like a different experience. And then
mean, for
in
me-
some of the newer games, it's a bit different.
The satisfaction of when you've like fought the same boss numerous times over and over and over again, you can't explain that feeling of when you kill it, when like you've maybe spent 4 or 5 hours on it, you've been rocking back at, like, this might just be me, but I know, in fact I know it's not just me, where you're kind of like rocking backwards and forwards, you're debating throwing the controller, you're hearing these same fucking voice lines from the boss over and over again. You start like getting really frustrated, mocking its voice. Even if you're on your own, you're just mocking its voice, like doing an imitation of it. Like, I think it was at the end of Gears of War 3, the last boss had me doing that on Insane, playing it solo. I honestly, Dark Souls 1 and 2 had me doing that. And eventually, I do want to play Sekiro on stream when it goes down in price, because I feel like it's such a good journey to, like, a good game, not only to watch as a game, but to watch someone play through it. Like, I feel like it's a journey, and you know what the end goal is, to beat this like insane game. Like watching Rico go through it, his reaction when he beat the final boss was nuts. Like watching that journey of him play it for that many hours.
Yeah, BigSteak still needs to play Bloodborne. What about you, Phil? Do you have any experience with these games?
I played Dark Souls 1 and 2 a little bit when they came out the first time around, and I can't really hang with the difficulty on it. Like, I just, between all my other work, I don't have time to grind into a game like that. And I love games that have those skill curves, and I like that they don't apologize for it. And it's just one of those games, like, I stream and watch a lot of playthroughs just to kind of make sure the things that are coming out that I don't have time for. Like, unfortunately, the Resident Evil remakes are another one where I'm like, I love those games, but I don't have time to get in the middle of a Resident Evil sesh. And unfortunately, Dark Souls is just on that pile of games that, like, I haven't gotten to be hands-on with. But some amazing art. Like, I've got all the art books, and it's just, like, eye candy. And there's so many tributes to a lot of other franchises I love through Dark Souls. It's very, very cool.
Gambit said, "Is that a Gundam behind Phil?"
Yeah, I have a Wing Gundam over here. I'm gonna model him in 3D sometime in the future, because when I graduated college, like, my senior project was this really low resolution model of Wing Gundam, and I'm like, man, I should just see like what it would feel like to do that now with our modern tech. So it's just kind of like a personal project I'm getting spun up on. Good eye though. Well done, Jay.
Love me some Wing Gundam. That's where my name is from.
Oh, right on, from Duo and Wing from Heavy
Yeah.
Arms. Awesome. Yeah, I love that series. That's like how I got into Gundam and all that stuff. And
Yeah, me
it's
too.
always,
Me too.
it's always got a sweet spot for me.
Gambit said when he streamed Sekiro, someone got mad that he wasn't raging. And Leah said, going back to the quest conversation, how do you guys feel about escort quests and fetch quests? If it's escorting an AI, it can fuck off. I hate it, dude. Like, honestly, me as a consumer and a player, I hate it.
As long as you're walking the same speed, it's fine.
Skyrim never did that. Like, they're lagging behind or miles in front of you. But Skyrim's just, it's a whole nother level of things that happened in that game.
Just a whole lot of tedious. Not my cup of tea, but, you know, something I would...
scenario I can't stand is when you have to escort an AI and you have to do the mission silently or without being seen, and the AI is just a complete fucking moron, and it just runs out or hides, and you're like...
So, in The Last of Us, they actually said that they just made Ellie invisible so that no enemy can see her. To get around that problem of her being always around and maybe doing dumb shit, because they would always attract people or something like that. She is just invisible to enemies.
That's how it should be. I think we've gone through all the questions. We're at an hour 54. I don't want to keep you guys any longer because 2 hours of your time is already appreciated. I appreciate you all being on here.
It was a lot of fun.
We're going to wrap up there. Thank you all for coming on in your time. If
Thank you
you're
for having us.
watching on YouTube and you're still here, then hello. Congratulations for sitting through an hour and 54 minutes. If you're still here on Twitch, we appreciate you. Leah, Gambit, I know Silence lurking about. Polar, for stopping in. I think you're new here, so thank you for coming in, dude. Gaz was here, but she's in the same room as me, asleep. Sticks and Vix, everyone who's been here, thank you. We're going to wrap it all up there. If you want to rewatch this again, it'll be on YouTube probably tonight. It's 4 a.m, so there's no point me sleeping. I'll just upload it now.
Just
We
stay
shall
up.
catch
It's
you
already
all on
tomorrow.
the next one. Yeah, it's already tomorrow. Yeah, you're not wrong. I'll see if there's anyone we can host, like Raid. If you guys have any suggestions of anyone that's live, we'll pass all these lovely people over to them.
Peas and
I'll
rice is nutritious and